Well, the weather, you know, it's sort of like the English weather, you know, and it was gray clouds, leaden sky, but perfectly clear, perfect visibility. Okay, and there was absolutely no sound at this time. Um, what you call it? The when it happened, it was dead silent. I mean, before, I mean, because this window was actually in my kitchen, and I was making coffee, and so I opened the window to get some light in, and also to see outside. And there was just no cars, nobody out on the street, dead silent. Okay, until what I described. And after that, you know, a couple of minutes later, then you started hearing the distant sound of sirens and emergency personnel going to the site of the explosions. There were two. Okay, I mean, I want to emphasize this. Now, that's what I saw and heard. That's like I would say objective fact, or you want to call it subjective fact. And the conversation about epistemology will have to wait. But anyway, that's what I saw and heard. Now, my inference of that information is that probably the first was the actual bomb or missile or rocket or shell or whatever. And the second, maybe it hits some gas thing, or maybe it's one of these weapons that hits a target, waits a while, and then blows up. I don't know. But I'm telling you that that's what I saw. And for the second explosion, I did not see anything in the sky moving towards the position. Okay. And it was right in the same position. Okay. So take that for what it's worth.
So you made comments before that were certainly critical of President Zelensky.
Yes.
And now you're in a city that is under air assault
Yes.
by Russia. How do
Yes.
you feel about the Russian operation that's ongoing?
I mean, I know what I'm supposed to say, and I know what I actually think. What I'm supposed to say is that I think this is horrible and disgusting, and I'm with the Ukrainian people, and the Russians are bad, and Putin is Hitler, and I know that that's supposed to be the narrative. Okay. Now, first of all and foremost, I have nothing but love and affection for the people of Ukraine. I live here. I've made my home here for a number of years, and I love it here. My children are Ukrainian. I think it's a wonderful country, a wonderful people. And I have no doubt whatsoever as to the valor and bravery of the Ukrainian armed forces. I want to make that crystal clear. As a realistic matter, it seems that the Zelensky administration, in many ways, was led down the garden path by NATO and the European Union. And it essentially thought that it was a lot bigger and stronger than it actually was, and that it was backed by stronger forces that, when the time came, seemed to have left Ukraine to its own devices. So that's obviously, to me, an arrogance and foolishness and a blindness on the part of Zelensky. But that happens to us all. We are all subject to thinking that we are stronger than we actually are, and we all fall sometimes for the trap of thinking that our friends are really going to help us when we really need them. And it turns out that they're just fair weather friends, or they're manipulating us for reasons of their own. That happens to us all. And so I do not have a problem with that insofar as the Zelensky regime. I think the Zelensky regime brought this on itself in many ways, this invasion, with its foolish talk of hosting nuclear weapons on Ukraine's soil, which I think it was just foolish. And somebody should have shut him up or told him that such a thing is incredibly provocative to a country as historically paranoid as Russia. Now, but all of that is excusable. What I personally find inexcusable is giving out weapons to civilians who do not know what they are doing with these weapons. They do not have any kind of training with the weapons, and more importantly than training with the weapon, it's small arms combat tactics, which are very specific. You have to know what you're doing and how to operate on a team with a team. These are things that I do not know, but I know enough to know that they exist, and that if you do not train properly, you can become not only a liability, you can get yourself killed or other people killed. And so I thought that that was incredibly irresponsible. And then came the news that I know, and this is a fact, I know two individuals, business associates of mine. I'm not going to mention their names, of course, or their positions, but I can assure you that they are professional people with the best education. And quite frankly, they're like me, pot-bellied, middle-aged guys with a double chin. And they fled Kiev because they were terrified of being forcibly conscripted into the Ukraine army. The mainstream media is reporting that Ukraine is not allowing able-bodied men to leave Ukraine. That I believe is true, but what I do know is true is that the Ukraine government, the Zelensky regime, is actively looking for military-age men, and I know two men personally, and I've known them for a while now, that they were fearful enough of this possibility that they fled the city. They weren't that afraid of the Russian army, but they were afraid of being forcibly conscripted. These, of course, are family men. They are men who did not have any kind of military training and would, frankly, would not be combat effective, if you want to put it in those terms. But they had this real fear. Now, also, these are two businessmen who are very, tough-minded, and they don't panic easily. They've been in enough crises not to panic easily. And for them to have thought that this was a real fear tells me that this is not a rumor, this is not misinformation, this is actual fact. And I like I said, I've done business with these two individuals over enough period of time to know that they do not panic, over a spilled drink. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, that was the second thing that bothered me. The weapons, handing out weapons irresponsibly to people. The second thing was the forcible conscription of able-bodied men, which I think is dangerous to those able-bodied men. And the third thing that is starting to happen, and it's in the news, that Zelensky is putting weapons in the hands of prisoners, incarcerated individuals, convicts, putting the hands in convicts with military experience. Now, that sort of thing is not going to end well. Now, will it? Yeah, and this is my judgment insofar as forcible conscription and handing out weapons to the civilian population and encouraging them to make Molotov cocktails. I mean, I've seen video, and I'm sure you have too, of veritable open markets where they have all of these bottles and they are assembling Molotov cocktails for essentially a guerrilla warfare, a resistance fight against the invading Russian army. I think that is deeply, deeply irresponsible. But quite frankly, I think that the motivation for the Zelensky regime to do this is to create a photo opportunity of Russian atrocities against the Ukrainian people so as to emotionally manipulate the West into pursuing a course of action that will lead to a direct military confrontation between the NATO states and the United States and Russia, of course. And so I think that this is obvious to me. And you and I are grown-ups and sophisticated enough to realize when something is being done for a later move, for a later effect to bring a positive outcome. And this is clear. You don't hand out weapons to civilians unless you want them to get killed. You don't encourage mass resistance with Molotov cocktails and whatnot unless you want to see dead bodies on the streets. Quite apart from the fact that it was obvious to anyone that handing out weapons to civilians, those weapons would inevitably gravitate to the criminal element in Ukrainian society. And all countries in the world, including my own, Chile, have a criminal class, a criminal underclass, if you will. This is, again, I am not casting any kind of aspersion on the Ukrainian people. I'm saying this is the reality of the situation and the reality of human society, that we inevitably will wind up with an underclass of criminals that for whatever reason, they just stay in that class and the weapons inevitably gravitate to that class and those weapons will be used. And so, yeah, I think that this effort to deliberately, indirectly, but deliberately cause atrocities against Ukrainian citizens, civilians, is despicable. It's as simple as that. There is no military utility in handing out weapons to people. There is no military utility in teaching, teenagers to throw Molotov cocktails. But there is a lot of utility insofar as the image of dead Ukrainians shot by Russian soldiers. And that seems to me the motivation. And
now,
so
can I just interject you? So there's two threats to you right now. There are the Russian forces themselves, and then there are the Ukrainians who have been armed, who have been instructed to construct these Molotov cocktails. As you go about your day, which of those threats is foremost in your mind?
At this time, the extremists who are following Zelensky's playbook. Yes, I'm more concerned for my personal safety. You mean? Yes.
Yeah, for your personal safety.
Yes, and of course, because they've already said that they want to kill me. So, they've actually made a meme.
They've made a meme about killing you personally?
Yeah.
Because of the comments that have been attributed to you?
I beg your pardon?
Because of the comments that have been attributed to you, the Russian translated video that took some liberties with your words, is that what gave rise to all this?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I was deeply upset when I heard about that that piece. I don't speak Russian myself. I'm frankly too stupid. So let's leave it at that.
Very difficult language. It's a very difficult language.
Well, I have a hard time in English, and let alone Spanish. So let's not go on the language issue. But the point, the serious point. I think that these extremists really want my head, and I think, on a human level, I realize what it is. It's frustration and fear at obviously a war that is being won by the Russians. It's obvious, and I do not understand people in Europe or the United States who honestly think that the Russians are losing. A lot of people seem to be saying that, and you just look at a map. You just look at verified video evidence of forward Russian units going into certain towns, and you know that there are those towns because of the geography, and you can just check it up on Google Maps, and you look at the map and you see how far the Russians have gotten in the time frame that's been going on, and they're winning decisively. And I don't mean to hurt anyone's feelings, but you have to look at the world realistically. And I think that one of the great problems that we currently have is that people are enamored of narratives instead of looking at reality. This is reality. This is what's coming at you. And so you have to face it. And you have to realize that a lot of times the people on your side might not be the best people. And the people on the opposing side might have very good reasons for why they're doing something which to you might seem an atrocity, but to them might seem a necessity. And so that's my thinking at this time.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your observations from the ground, for spending this time with me, and please stay safe, because it sounds like a very dangerous situation, especially for you now that you've been targeted. Yeah,
but my life has been rather bizarre, and so I'm kind of like shocked that it's turned this odd turn, but it's taken this odd turn rather. But I'll be fine. I'll be fine.